This is WFYI News Now. It's November 25th, and I'm Zach Bundy. On today's show, Indiana families grapple with increased cost for childcare after cuts to state vouchers. The body of a cleaning professional allegedly killed by a homeowner in Whitestown arrived in her home country over the weekend. And Indianapolis is at risk of losing about $10 million federal dollars designed for long-term housing programs.
And so the implications of that are, it is possible Indianapolis could lose a significant portion of our funding because it is much more at risk and much more highly competitive.
Those stories coming up, but first. Indianapolis City-County Council member Nick Roberts is one of the latest Indiana officials dragged into threats targeting state lawmakers in the midcycle redistricting debate. Roberts is unique in that he is a local official, a Democrat, and not someone who can vote on redistricting. A growing list of state officials have announced they were targets of similar threats, which so far includes Governor Mike Braun, a senator who is for redistricting, and lawmakers who were undecided or against it. Indiana families are grappling with increased costs for childcare after cuts to state vouchers. Dylan Pierce-McCoy reports that Republican leaders in the State House say one solution is to reduce government rules.
Lawmakers shared ideas for how to address the state's crisis in affordable childcare at an Indiana Chamber of Commerce panel ahead of the legislative session. Senate President Pro Tem Roderick Bray, who leads Republicans in the chamber, said state efforts to improve quality have fueled the high cost of childcare.
We tried to add quality and safety to the daycare and preschool programs, which is a laudatory goal. But when you do that, you make it more expensive.
Bray says pushing for higher quality care for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, quote, choked off the supply of options for families. Bray says lawmakers aim to deregulate childcare to make it less expensive. I'm Dylan Pierce-McCoy.
The body of a cleaning professional allegedly killed by a homeowner in Whitestown arrived in her home country over the weekend. Zach Castle brings us this story about the mother of four from reporting partner the Associated Press.
Maria Florinda Rios Perez de Velasquez was allegedly shot through a front door by Whitestown resident Kurt Anderson on November 5th after she arrived at the wrong address. Anderson is charged with one count of voluntary manslaughter. Rios Perez's body arrived in Guatemala City late Sunday. Family members, including her mother Vilma Perez, received her body at the airport before returning to her hometown 125 miles away. Women in the town cooked food for mourners. People placed flowers and pictures on an altar at her parents' home. Rios Perez and two daughters joined family in Indiana 2 years ago. A jury trial for Anderson is scheduled for March 30th. I'm Zach Castle.
And for our final story today, Indianapolis is at risk of losing about $10 million federal dollars designated for long-term housing programs. Jill Sheridan reports that could significantly challenge current efforts to end homelessness.
Indianapolis hinged much of its plans to end homelessness on Housing First programs like permanent supportive housing and long-term funds for rent assistance. Now the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development notified state and local organizations that the majority of federal funding for those strategies will shift to, quote, transitional housing and supportive services, ending the status quo that perpetuated homelessness through a self-sustaining slush fund. Chelsea Herring-Cozy is executive director of the Coalition for Homelessness Intervention and Prevention and says this shift will have a major impact.
And so the implications of that are, it is possible Indianapolis could lose a significant portion of our funding because it is much more at risk and much more highly competitive.
The federal funding request will be delayed due in part to the government shutdown. I'm Jill Sheridan.
That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by me, Zach Bundy, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music. If you liked today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back tomorrow.